Today's lesson goes over measuring and classifying angles. So we're going to end up having to use a protractor. They ask us to actually measure some angles and then also form some angles. So this is a protractor. Protractor is a measuring device. It measures these angles. Notice how it's got a hole typically, or sometimes it doesn't have a hole, but it has a center mark. And this is always where you end up putting your angle. So you want the angle right here. And so what we'll end up seeing is a line and on one side of this dot, and then we'll have another line going up in this direction. And then what you're going to end up having to do is center your protractor, just as I have here, where this point is where what we call the vertex. It's where these two lines come together. And they want us to measure this. And so what you're going to end up wanting to do is, just as I have this protractor right in line, see this line that goes from 0 all the way to the 180 mark, that's a straight angle, or just a straight line. And you want one of your lines that forms this angle right alongside that line. You want in the center, where this hole is, or where the center mark is, you want that vertex where the two lines come together. And then you've got this other line that comes up. Now, it typically won't make it all the way to the angle. So what you're going to want to do is extend that line. Now, you're going to want to use a ruler or use the edge of this protractor. See, if I just draw it out, you can see that I'm not going to end up drawing it as straight as I could if I could used a ruler. And so you want to extend it all the way out until it crosses this, or until it's at least as wide or long as the protractor is wide. And so from there you can end up reading your measurements. Again, use a ruler, because you see how my line's not really straight. If you use a ruler, it would be straight and you'd be able to get a better measurement. But how do we measure this? Well, if we look at a protractor, we've got different measurements. It starts here at 0, but then we also see this 180. So what happens is we read the smaller angles here. Smaller numbers are the smaller angles. Start at 0, which has no angle, and then it gets bigger. See, these are increments of 1, and this is a 5 mark right here. And then we have a big mark here, and that's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, and all the way to 90. Notice 90 is what we call a right angle. And so right here, when it says right, this is a 90-degree angle. Now, anything smaller than 90, from 90 to 0, we call acute. And so this is from 0 to 90 degrees, or it's just smaller than 90. So we'll just say 0 to less than 90 degrees. So something smaller than 90 degrees but bigger than 0 is going to end up being, so I'll write down, greater than 0 to less than 90 degrees is acute. So anything in this range here we call acute. Now anything bigger than 90, we use these numbers here. And so you see, as I'm reading from right to left as I go over this arc here, I'm getting to the bigger numbers, and anything bigger than 90 to 180 are obtuse angles. So this obtuse represents numbers that are greater than 90 degrees we'll just say, but smaller, so less than 180 degrees. Because 180 degrees we call a straight angle. So this is 180 degrees is just straight, a straight line. And so when I'm reading it, obtuse, when it's an obtuse angle, bigger than 90, so 90 are perpendicular. So maybe I'll write down 90 degrees. They're perpendicular lines. And perpendicular means that the two lines come to a T, and they form a 90-degree angle. So that's what we see here, this 90-degree angle. So anything bigger is obtuse. That means the obtuse ones, you read the bigger numbers. Acute, you use the smaller numbers. That's why they have these angles on both sides, because it kind of depends on which way you lined up your protractor. And so since this is bigger than 90, we're going to read the bigger number here. And so when I read it, I read to it's in between 130 and 140, and it looks like, if I was to say this was straight, it looks like I see two lines just smaller than the 135, and then I see it just passes right through that third line to the right of the 135. So this would be 134, 133, 132 is about what I would say this angle is. So this angle is about 132 degrees. And so I'll come up with another one here. Let's say I have another line that goes maybe out this way this time. So it's going right alongside here. And then from there, fix that real quick. So again, we put at this center point, we're going to put that protractor right on the vertex, and the line goes right alongside here, and let's say it goes out this way. So that's what our angle looks like they give us, and we need to measure that. So again, you're going to place the protractor, the vertex, right at this hole or that center mark that they tell you to, and then you're going to have one of the lines lined up alongside this 180 or 0, and I call this zeroing out the protractor, so that way we can measure this angle. So it's got to be along this line. If it's not, you're not going to measure it right. You're going to end up having to extend the line. So line up the ruler alongside this line and extend it up. And extend it all the way past how far that protractor is wide, and then go ahead and read it. Now, we're not going to read the big angles here because we've got an acute angle. An acute is smaller than 90, but bigger than 0. So we're reading the smaller numbers here. So we have 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 31, 32. Notice how there's one mark in between the black line and the 130. So that's 131, or I'm sorry, 31 and 32 degrees is what we'd have here. So that's a 32-degree angle. Well, you have 3 problems or so that ask you about measuring angles, and that's what you're going to end up doing, extending the lines and then measuring the angle. Make sure you put the vertex right at that center point and line up one of the lines alongside the 0 mark, or the straight angle of the protractor. The next set is going to ask you to actually draw some lines. So let's take a look at that. Let's say we take another protractor here, and I'll line it up here, and we have to draw an angle, and it tells you maybe to draw an obtuse angle. And so what you're going to end up doing is you're going to start by putting a dot somewhere. And so you put a dot somewhere on the paper, and then that's where you're going to put the line. And from there, you're going to end up drawing a line. Now just draw a line straight out, maybe horizontal with the paper. And then from there, you're going to line up your protractor, just as I have here, where the protractor has the 0 line in line with the line that you drew. At the end of the line that you drew, you have it at that hole, or the zeroed out mark, or the center of the protractor. And then let's say you want an obtuse angle. You need something bigger than 90. And so let's say they actually asked you for a 100-degree angle. Well, here's 100 degrees right here. And so then you would just mark right where 100 degrees is. See how I just marked it with a dot? And then from there, you're going to pick up your protractor. You're going to line up your protractor right alongside this dot that you just made and this end point that you had the center of the protractor on. And then you're going to line up that straight edge of the protractor and then draw a line between those 2 dots. So let's try that one more time here with maybe a smaller angle. Maybe this time we'll do a right angle this time. So let's say we want it to make a right angle, and again, this was a 100-degree angle in that last one we just did. If you want a right angle, again, same sort of thing. You're going to draw a line, and then at the end of the line, this is where that point is. That's the vertex. This is where you line up the protractor. You put the protractor either at the center hole right there, or sometimes it's at the bottom of the protractor. You'll put it right there, kind of depending on your model. And then if you want a 90-degree angle, you just put a dot right up at 90 degrees. And again, just right above it. You can put it below here because they extend it out, but typically if it's anything other than 90, you're going to have to put it on the outside of this arc. And then once you have that, then you're going to take your protractor off the drawing, and then you're going to line up this straight edge portion right here alongside this dot, and you're going to draw the line right between those 2 points. And there we have our 90-degree angle. And so one more here. Let's take and draw an acute angle. And an acute angle is going to be smaller than 90, and so it's the same sort of thing. We're going to take this dot and draw a line from there. And again, line up your protractor just as I have here with the center of the protractor at the end of the line, and then you're going to draw an acute angle. Let's say you want a 40-degree angle. You can put a dot right at 40 above, pick up your protractor, use this straight edge portion down here, line it up between this point, and then draw the line. And that's a 40-degree angle. Well, over here we have to classify each angle as acute, right, obtuse, or straight. Well, here, this is bigger than 90. Notice that 90 is exactly perpendicular, where the two lines make a right angle. And so this one we would call obtuse. Well, looking at this line here, it looks like it is obtuse as well. It looks like it's more than 90. 90 would have to be straight up and down, so I would call this one an obtuse angle as well. So let's end up drawing a right angle. Right angle, and we drew one right over here, makes a perpendicular. So this is our symbol for right, and this would be a right angle when it's a 90-degree angle. That's what we're looking for right. Well, this is much smaller than 90. In between 90 and 0 is an acute angle. And then we don't have a straight angle listed, so let's just draw one. A straight angle goes straight across the page without bending at all. So there it is, straight. Makes 180 degrees. So two 90-degree angles add up to a straight angle. Well, then you've got some problems that say together angle 1 and angle 2 form a straight angle. If angle 1 is acute, what must be true about angle 2? So let's draw what we've got. If I draw another straight angle, and I draw a line going off at an angle like this, this is angle 1. See, angle 1 here, this angle is acute. It's smaller than 90. See, here's a 90 degree. Here's an acute angle, a 40-degree angle. Well, what do we know about this angle, angle 2? We know that angle 1 and angle 2 form 180 degrees. So what do we know about this angle here, from this point all the way over here? Well, we know it has to be a big angle. Well, what are the big angles called? Well, those are called obtuse angles. So we must know that angle 2, there's our symbol for angle, angle 2 is obtuse because angle 1 plus angle 2 equal 180 degrees. And if angle 1 is smaller than 90, angle 2 must be larger than 90 degrees. And that's the definition of an acute angle, is one that is smaller than 90. And the definition of an obtuse angle is one that is larger than 90 degrees. Well, is the following statement always true, sometimes true, or never true? Explain your reasoning. Two acute angles of the same size form a right angle. Well, let's see here. If here's a right angle, if I draw a right angle here, a right angle is 90 degrees. For two acute angles to be the same size that form a right angle, what do you think those angles must be? I draw it out this way. See, this is an acute angle here, and this is an acute angle here, and they're exactly the same size. So what two numbers add to make 90 that are the same? Well, if I take 90 divided by 2, I get 45 degrees. So that means this angle is 45 degrees, and this angle is 45 degrees. So yes, I can make two acute angles that are the same size form a right angle. But is every one that way? So is the following statement true? Explain the reason two acute angles of the same size form a right angle. Yes, these two do, but if I had another one, like let's say this one here, let's say I have 30 degrees as one of the angles. And so let's go ahead and draw that real quick. Here's my 30-degree angle right here. And then I have another 30-degree angle right here. Do those form a 90 degree? No, they don't. See, 30 plus 30 only adds up to 60 degrees. So we would say sometimes true. sometimes, and our explanation is kind of in our example here, that two 45s equal 90, but two 30s don't equal 90. So we would say not all acute angles that are equal add to 90 degrees. Only one set, and that would be the 45 and 45. So that is the lesson on measuring and classifying angles. Good luck on tonight's homework.